All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first installment in our Working with Tribal Historic Preservation Offices workshops for the month of May in the OKPAN Archaeological Skills Workshop Series. We are delighted to be joined today by Lindsey Bilyeu, and I would like to welcome her in just a moment, but first I would like to provide a few brief instructions on how we're going to do question and answer portion of this workshop. If you can see at the bottom of your screen, there should be a button that says Reactions. And underneath that, you can raise your hand when we get to the end of the question portion, or just raise your hand on your video. So thank you for joining us today, and I would like to introduce our instructor for today, Lindsey Bilyeu. Lindsey is the Senior Section 106 Reviewer for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma's Historic Preservation Department. She is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma with a BA in Native American Studies. She continued her education and obtained a Master of Science in Native American Leadership from Southeastern Oklahoma State University. She has worked with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma's Historic Preservation Department for 8 years. Lindsey gives many presentations for federal agencies on the NHPA Section 106 process, cultural sensitivity, and historical trauma. She has also given presentations in public schools and at various events. She is a member of the National Congress of American Indians. Lindsey enjoys attending conferences, participating in research, educating people on the importance of preservation, reading, fishing, and spending time with her husband and their 2 dogs. So thank you for joining us today, Lindsey. I'm gonna make you a co-host here so that you can share your screen. And we'll be ready to go. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we're gonna get ready to watch the video. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay. All right, here we go.
Lindsey, we can't really hear it.
Oh, okay, hang on. Let me see what I can do about the volume.
All right, sounds good.
Technical difficulties.
If you could check the box at the bottom of the screen sharing option that says share audio.
Oh, okay.
I think that'll help.
Okay, let's see. Share computer sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start this. Oh, there we go. Is that better?
So the Section 106 process came about from the National Historic Preservation Act that was passed in 1966. We were losing landmarks at a really high rate in this country, and so they made the preservation laws like the Antiquities Act and others to preserve these places of historic significance. So today we use this law and the National Register of Historic Places to provide eligibility for protection of historic and sacred sites, cultural sites. In the beginning, it did not include tribes. It was later amended and tribes were brought in on the consultation process. So there are several different reasons why we consult for Section 106 for archaeological sites and cultural and religious sacred sites. Some of which would be to keep our culture alive, to protect what our ancestors left for us for today and for the future. We get to come to the table with federal agencies on a government-to-government basis as a sovereign nation, and we represent what's going to be happening in the process. Now, the process involves consultation, and the law states meaningful consultation. And that is when we work with federal agencies on any ground disturbing projects. The state historic preservation officers who review these projects for each individual state. There's initial consultation that is sent out by the federal agency. At that point, the federal agency We'll wait for our response. We have a 30-day window that we can get a response back to the federal agency, either issuing a finding of no properties affected, or we can ask for additional information, which will start the process over again. And we keep going through this process until we are able to come to a conclusion that both sides are satisfied with, to protect any historic properties, sacred sites. We come to the conclusion that we can protect them as best as possible. So the Choctaw Nation has a 9-state area of historic interest, and we have 4 reviewers that work on these projects. I personally review the projects in Mississippi and Louisiana. Karen Downen reviews the projects in Alabama. Madison Curry reviews the projects in Arkansas, Oklahoma, a portion of Tennessee, and in a portion of Texas. And then Vanjie Robinson does our cell tower reviews, which are still part of the Section 106 process. They're just handled a little differently, but she does all the reviews in the 9 states for those cell towers. Unfortunately, you can't save everything, but you go into it with the attitude that you're going to try to save whatever you can. I would like archaeologists to know that we're still here. We still have a culture, we're still living, and we are thriving as Choctaw people, and we are able to take the responsibility of protecting these sites and being able to work right beside them. You know, Native cultures have been studied for centuries now, and we sometimes lose track and lose the big picture of we're actual people, and we still live, and these sites are still important to us. So when the law says a good faith, reasonable and good faith effort and meaningful consultation, that means treating us as a partner, as a sovereign nation, and not just something that's going to get in your way and hinder your progress.
All right. So is it okay that I stop sharing and all that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was a lot of fun making it. Yeah, I'm ready to see what you guys thought.
Well, I've got a few questions I'd like for us to start with, Lindsey.
Okay.
The first I would like to ask you, what do you expect out of federal agencies and archaeologists doing fieldwork as a senior Section 106 reviewer?
As far as federal agencies go, we expect them to make that good faith, that reasonable and good faith effort that I talked about in the video, but that is very subjective, and everyone seems to have a different idea of what a meaningful consultation is going to be. Meaningful consultation is not just a letter that is sent to our office. It is engaging with us, having meetings with us, discussing the projects in depth, and treating us like partners. So many times we just receive a letter saying, this is what we're going to do. The federal agency has decided, oh, this isn't going to have an effect on anything before they even talk to us about it. So my job in that situation is to actually talk with them and let them know that, we may not agree with this determination. We need additional information. There are certain things we need to review a project with. We need a project location. We need maps. We need cultural resources surveys. Any information they have about this project, including a description of the ground disturbing activities, they need to provide that to us so we can look at our own GIS database where we have our own register of known Choctaw sites. So it's this interaction and actually putting forth the effort to talk to us and not treat us like a hindrance. And then for archaeologists working in the field, there are certain survey standards that we expect to be followed. At a minimum, we expect the state standards to be followed. There are some states that we don't necessarily agree with the state standards on, so we ask for a little more of an intensive survey than what is normally recommended in that state. And it all depends on what we know is in the area and the likelihood of discovering something. When we work in our area of interest, each state is going to have its own unique cultural sites that we're looking for in each state. So it's important that the archaeologists do their background research, reach out to us and talk to us if they have any questions, and then make sure they're following the recommended standards from the state or what our office recommends.
Thank you, Lindsey. And as a follow-up question, I would like to ask, what do you think is the importance of archaeological ethics in this context?
You know, I was just having a conversation earlier today where for many of the projects we work on, it may not be a archaeologist for federal agencies that are doing the work. It might be a CRM, a cultural resources management firm. And unfortunately, it really seems like ethics and archaeology are being lost. Sites are being overlooked. Sites are being written off as not eligible without ever talking to the tribe and asking us what we think eligibility should be for the National Register. They are giving partial site eligibilities where they're splitting the site into pieces and saying, okay, this part is eligible, this part is not, so the project can go through. That's not how it works. Sites are looked at as a whole. You can't dissect them and still say that it's not going to affect their eligibility status. Another thing is they're looking at sites and possibly losing context of what the importance of the site is, because all they're interested in is what they can get out of the site materially and not necessarily what it means culturally or to the science of archaeology. So that's a big issue. And you know, we need to get back to the idea that if we're going to look at a site, we look at it in context. We look at it for what we can learn from it, not just what we can take out and put in a museum.
That does sound like a large, complicated issue.
Yes.
Another complicated issue I'd like to ask you about is, what are some of the effects of COVID-19 and our new digital landscape? What have those been on your role as a senior Section 106 reviewer?
You know, actually, in some ways it has been good because we are having more meetings with the federal agencies because it's easier to do. We are a removed tribe from our homelands, and you know, it's hard for us to get back there. So in some ways, it's been easier to actually have meetings, and we can have them more often because there's not the expense of the tribe trying to get to the meetings. The federal agency isn't having the expense for paying for that. In other areas, the tribe's not having to pay for us to travel. But one of the other issues that comes up is that we are missing that face-to-face interaction. Even though we're on Zoom and we can see each other, it's not the same as being in person. And another problem that we have is when we have these meetings, a lot of times we get to go back out into the homelands. We get to go into the field sometimes and see these cultural sites that are being discovered. And, you know, it helps us connect with the site. It helps us, you know, feel like we're back at home and feel that pride that this is our homelands. And so we're definitely missing that because the federal agencies a lot of times would give us a really good opportunity to get out and see the land again. So that has been one of the challenges. So, you know, it's kind of the catch-22 situation where, you know, it's important that we have meetings. We're having meetings more often, but we're not getting that interaction with the homelands and with those people we have built these relationships with the agencies.
Yeah, there really is nothing like actually being in a place for building relationships. I completely understand what you're talking about there. So we'd like to open it up for audience questions. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or turn your video on and raise your hand, or put it in the chat, or use that little raise hand reaction option. So does anyone have any questions they'd like to start out with? Let's see. Looks like we've got one here. Tim Roberts.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation and for taking my question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the government-to-government interaction that's required when consulting with tribes, particularly in the context of situations where, say, CRM consultants or even state historic preservation offices are concerned, and just kind of the best ways to navigate that to sort of ensure, a real partnership and meaningful communication.
Okay. So what we experience a lot of times is we have relationships not only with the federal agencies, but we have relationships with the state historic preservation offices as well. So we like to have government-to-government consultation with the federal agency where they are approaching us directly. But in some situations, we do work with the state as well in collaboration when it comes to taking care of the things in our homelands. We talk to each other about findings of effect for archaeological sites, survey concerns, whether methodology is being followed. And so we collaborate on things like that. But our determination is independent from what the State Historic Preservation Office provides. And we can disagree with their finding of effect because, we are seen as a federal partner and they are just a state partner. So while they have a say in what happens, we also have an equal or more say in what's going on. When we're dealing with eligibility determinations for archaeological sites, if a site has not been consulted on, if their eligibility determination has not been consulted on with a tribe, then that is not a valid eligibility finding. And so it's the CRM's job to go out, follow the state standards, or if we want more intensive standards, we will provide that information and do the best possible survey that they can, get us the information. They can make recommendations on what they think the eligibility finding should be. And then we are going to work with the state and within our office to determine if we agree with those eligibility findings. And then we will talk as the Historic Preservation Department for Choctaw Nation, we'll talk to the the federal agency and provide our either agreement or disagreement with the eligibility findings. But the most important thing is that the federal agencies are actually consulting us first, that we get brought in from the beginning and not just the historic preservation offices for the state. And then CRM firms, they can provide scopes of work for what they're going to be doing for as far as the survey goes, and the research methodology and what they're looking to find when they're looking at these sites. And they can provide that to federal agency, which will then provide it to the tribes. But technically how consultation with tribes is supposed to work is that everything should be funneled through the federal agency to the tribe. Hopefully that answers your question. I was rambling a little bit there.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, and someone has made a comment in the chat that says the consultation responsibility remains with the federal agency to conduct government-to-government consultation. Chris, do you have a question? You're on mute. If you go down to this bottom bar, there it is.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Lindsey. I want you to know that the Southwestern Division, meaning Fort Worth District, Galveston District, Little Rock District, and Tulsa District combined are trying to come up with a tribal meeting,
Awesome.
and hopefully annually. And we're going to try to do that soon.
Okay.
And we're debating a couple of things I'd like your input on.
Okay.
Right now, the Southwestern Division, and I am the Southwestern Division Tribal Liaison for the division, we consult with 54 tribes. So one of the options is have a big meeting with 54 tribes, which is, as you can imagine, logistically challenging, or having a meeting with more engaged tribes, which of course the Choctaw Nation will be one of them. So I'd like your thoughts on that. And I'd like your thoughts on, for the first meeting being virtual versus in person basis. We're in a pandemic, and just logistically as well. So I'd like your thoughts on those two things. A more focused meeting or a broad meeting, or a virtual meeting versus an in-person meeting. And because I have a meeting on this Friday with my chain of command with the and we have to go to the general and tell him what we think. So I'd appreciate what your thoughts are on that.
Okay. I think we get into a danger zone when we start looking at what is considered engaged tribes compared to all of the tribes. You at least need to be sending out that invitation,
Sure.
and seeing who can be part of the tribe, who can be part of the consultation, and then who can't. I would think that would be the best option to take, is just finding out who can make the meeting. And one thing you might do, one thing that's really helped us is doodle polls and seeing what dates everybody is available. So letting them know we are looking at this range of dates, and just do the survey question, let us know what works for you, and then you get a better view, visually of who's available when. But making sure that you're not just saying these tribes are engaged with us most often, we're just going to consult with them. Send out that invitation to everyone, see what responses that you get back, and then move forward then. And as far as a virtual meeting compared to an in-person meeting, I know for us, we still have travel restrictions with Choctaw Nation. We're not able to leave the 10.5 counties for any meetings. So virtual, if you're looking to do that in the next few months, virtual would probably be the best way to go, because I know a lot of other tribes still have their COVID restrictions in place too.
Oh, thank you for your thoughts. I think we're kind of on the same page there, because we went and hired somebody that used to work for the Osage Nation, and she shared with me exactly what you just told me.
Yeah.
And she said, you're in the danger zone if you just do this engaged tribe thing. So yeah, so we'll be in touch hopefully soon. I have a meeting Friday with my chain of command.
Okay.
About the direction we're going to go. And this is something I think we've been needing to do for years.
Right.
So hopefully we can do one. It'll either be division-wide, which is what I'm hoping for, or it might even be more focused district by district, but I'm hoping more division, because so many of our tribes, including the Choctaw Nation, your area of interest go over our district boundaries. So I would prefer to have one larger division meeting. So we'll see how it goes, but we'll be in touch, and thank you for your input.
Well, thank you for asking. That's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Chris. And it looks like we have another question, this time from Jennifer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Lindsey, it wasn't a question. I was just thumb upping what Chris was saying because I'm trying to do something like that with Mississippi Valley Division also.
Okay.
So I'll be getting in touch with you guys. Pick some brains.
I think it's great that you guys want to do these meetings. That's something that would be helpful if we could get all agencies to do that, to have annual meetings with us. We do have a number that do have annual meetings, but there are some agencies that haven't really gotten on board with that yet. So kudos to you guys for doing that. It's greatly appreciated. That way we can get everybody either on the same Zoom call or, you know, hopefully later on in the year, possibly in person in one room, and the tribes can discuss what is important to them. And we can also have tribal caucuses to come together to discuss amongst the tribes what we think is important and what steps can be taken to improve consultation. And, you know, you get to hear from everybody and you get to have that interaction, that fellowship with us. And it's so important to do that. Building relationships is extremely important. You know, you guys can pick up the phone and call me anytime. You know, or send me an email. I will do my best to get back to you. It's just, you know, having that communication is so important. And, you know, that's how we become partners, not just, you know, not just government to government, but actually partners, and having that personal relationship goes a long way.
I agree. Thanks, Lindsey.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been sent a question in the chat about that asks, what is the best way to go about building these personal relationships, especially as a student or an emerging professional?
You know, reach out to us at the Historic Preservation Office. Let us know what your interests are. Why are you coming to the Choctaw Nation? What type of research are you interested in doing? We can provide some information that we may have, such as our cultural articles that we put in our newspaper every month, our website, sources you can go to actually find information that we recommend. And, you know, but the important thing is just reaching out. Tribes aren't as scary as people think. Some people are really intimidated and they're afraid to reach out to tribes, but you know, that initial interaction, just letting us know, hey, you guys are important, your sites are important, I want to do my best to protect them. What are your recommendations? Just asking us is the first important step, and from there we continue having conversations, and we get to know each other well through those interactions and also through in-person meetings. One thing that will happen though, when you do start working, if you start working for a CRM firm, you won't have as much interaction with us because things will be funneled through the federal agency that is contracting you. However, if there is something that you need to know, you know, have the federal agency ask us, or if you can try to reach out to us, you know, and just in an email saying, hey, I just have this question, what's the best way to represent you in this survey? Just do that and let us know.
It's really great, and yeah, it's really good advice. Sorry, did someone unmute or was I having an echo? Okay. Well, has anybody else got any questions? If not, I have another one that I would like to ask.
Okay.
How would you describe the work that you do on a day-to-day basis in a few sentences, like to a complete layperson?
So what I do on a day-to-day basis is I review ground disturbing projects that are being federally funded by a federal agency or is permitted by a federal agency. And I look to see through our information that we have in our office if they are going to destroy or disturb a site. And I try to help them avoid the site, or I try to help them I mostly try to help them avoid the site. And then if they can't avoid it, we come up with ways that we can still gain knowledge from it. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I work to protect our ancestors. I work to protect our culture, and a big part of that is protecting our cultural sites.
It's really great, Lindsey, and I think that really gets the importance of it.
I see in the chat that Alina had a question. So our tribe supports our office by providing the funding for us to have multiple positions. We are very blessed that we get to have that. A lot of these historic preservation offices may just have 1 or 2 people working in them. We have a large staff, and we're very lucky to have that, to have all the technology that we have. Our legal department supports us, and looking at agreement documents that we may have with federal agencies and making sure that our sovereignty is protected. Our chief's office and our upper leadership is very devoted, very supportive to making sure we have whatever we need and giving us any backing that we need to make sure that things get protected and treated properly. In any situation that we feel that we need our chief to step in, he is more than happy to do that. So we do get a lot of support from our upper leadership and the chief's office.
It's a great question. All right, did anybody else have something they wanted to ask? Well, if we don't have any further audience questions, I would like to thank you, Lindsey, for joining us today. And I really appreciated your video and a lot of your answers. I think they've been really great and informative.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I enjoy reaching out and working with the public, working with universities. It's so very important. If you guys ever have any questions, you can reach out to me at the Historic Preservation Department. I'm happy to talk about Section 106, cultural resources management, historical trauma, which was my area of focus when I was in college, and how that is affected by historic preservation. So any questions you have, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to. Oh, I think we have one more question.
Yeah.
So Section 106 in NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, it's a very fine line between NEPA and Section 106. These are actually things that should happen in tandem. NEPA is going to look at the environment of biology and, you know, this is a difficult question. They're going to be looking at more of the physical environment, and they're going to be looking at, you know, air quality, water quality, or they're supposed to be looking at air quality and water quality, the biology, the plants, the animals, what have you in the area, and then also how a project's going to affect the public. That actually kind of bleeds over into Section 106, because in Section 106, we look at things like traditional cultural properties, we look at sacred landscapes, we look at these bigger pictures, and not just actual cultural sites. There's more things you can look at there. So they actually kind of bleed into each other. But in our tribe, we have a environmental department that does the NEPA projects that come across within our reservation boundaries. And then we take care of the Section 106. When we're dealing with NEPA outside of the reservation boundaries, that's when we kind of have to wear both hats. And a lot of times, I know the approach that I take with it is I will get the NEPA documents and then I can review them, let them know if I think there's going to be any effect to any cultural properties, any traditional cultural properties, any cultural sites, burial locations, anything like that. And then I will ask to consult under Section 106. But for us in our department, we focus more on just Section 106 than we do on NEPA.
That does sound like a complicated question.
Very much so.
And I also saw that Kevin asked in the chat, where can I access the recording of this meeting? Well, around June 1st or shortly after, we will have a video of this meeting available on the OKPAN YouTube channel, which you can access by just looking up the Oklahoma Public Archaeology Network on YouTube. And you can also see our past programs on there. And tomorrow and the day after's workshops will also be on there. So we'll have those all up. Well, if we don't have any final questions, Lindsey, is there anything you would like to conclude with?
I just thank you guys so much for listening. It is so important for us to reach out and partner with universities and teach students from the beginning about Section 106, why it's important, why partnerships are important, why tribes are still important. We're still here. We still have a living culture. Just because we're not still in our traditional homelands doesn't mean that we're not concerned with what goes on there. We were given the responsibility from our ancestors to take care of the land, to take care of their final resting places, to take care of the culture that they left us, and protect that for the future, which also helps protect our sovereignty, because one of the aspects of sovereignty is having a living culture. A definite defined culture. So, it's important that we protect all that. And I just hope you guys understand the importance too. If you ever want to look at any other presentations or our Itifabasa, our cultural articles we put in our newspaper every month, you can go to ChoctawNationCulture.com and you can see additional resources there. And like I said, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Can we contact you from that website as well?
Yes, my contact information is on there under the Section 106 information. If you would like, I can put my contact information into the chat, if that would be helpful.
That would be great, yeah.
Okay, let me do that real quick.
Well, thank you for doing that, Lindsey. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow as well to learn about cultural GIS and Indigenous archaeology, and then on Thursday to learn about the NADPRO program. So join us at the same time, 1 p.m. You should have a Zoom link. If you only registered for one, you can still go back in and register for others. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you then.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon.